everyone. I'm Natasha Ryan. I am the VP of Communications for the North Group, and it is time to head north. This is our podcast where we tackle a lot of big topics. Today, we are doing that with my friend Olivia Arnauts, partner of Project ZF. Olivia, you and I have talked multiple times. I adore your mission and what you're doing. So if you want to just give a brief bio, and then we will dive into it, girlfriend.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. I am very excited to talk about this. Just before I jumped on, I was scrolling through some of your previous podcasts, and like you said, it really is the heavy-hitting, important topics that you guys jump into. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more, but like you said, my name is Olivia Arnauts. I'm a partner of Project ZF, which is made up of ZFIS, our protective intelligence business, the ZF Tactical Training Center and Leadership Development aspect, which is still in development, and then the Relentless Revival Safe Haven, which is our nonprofit, which seeks to provide a long-term restorative care program to survivors of human trafficking. So my husband and I are partners in that. I say he's my partner in life and business.
That's nice. That's nice to have. Double partner.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Olivia, we are here today to talk about human trafficking, your efforts to fight against it. But I think jumping off, it's so personal to you, and that's where the story begins. So I want you to talk a little bit about your personal trauma and how that has led your purpose in life.
Okay. Yes, as you know, it's still a little bit new to share, but I think once we became really public about the nonprofit, that's a question I get asked almost all of the time is, where is this coming from? Where's your heart coming from? People want to know, why you're in the restorative care process, why you want to be with vulnerable people. And I think people don't realize what they're looking at when they deal with me and kind of what I've been through. So I'm excited to share a little bit more and kind of start connecting with people who may have experienced what I did, or maybe their child is experiencing it, things like that, where I can actually help connect and, like we talked about before, maybe prevent or even protect our underage youth. And so my story is growing up in the world's teeniest, tiniest town. And I unfortunately was targeted through Facebook by an online, adult predator who had many other victims. I was one of a bunch, unfortunately. And so that led to years of grooming and eventually physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. And when I was about 15, one of his other victims spoke up. I always tell her and everybody that she saved our lives. I really give her that credit wholeheartedly. She won't accept it, but she wrote out a list of all of the girls she knew he was abusing and submitted that to the police. And so they jumped in, came to my house. My parents had never heard of any of it. And so it was really a big, shocking moment for them to realize what I had been going through. And to realize, some things started to kind of make sense for them, where I'd had some issues, obviously, and I was deeply emotionally impacted, and I was not myself. I was really controlled by this whole situation. And so I lived on a state borderline, and I didn't know the criminal justice system like most of our young girls who are vulnerable and victimized. And so I went to the wrong state to testify with the other girls. I did my impact statements and my forensic interviews. And then they said, if you want this to count, you've got to do this again in your own state. And they said it wouldn't count against him unless I did. And so at that time, I was so broken. The girls were so broken. They all allowed him to take plea deals because we were all 14, 15, and just, couldn't deal with the pain of it. And so I moved on with my life. I joined the Army at 17. I left. I never came back. And I really just started a new life for myself, and I never told my story again. And I got married, and I had 2 beautiful babies, and transitioned out of the military and into corporate security and things like that. And then out of the blue, 10 years after the fact, this comes up again. And my husband gets a call out of the blue on like a Tuesday afternoon that this man was going to be extradited to the state that I grew up in instead of being released after his 10-year sentence for the other victims. And so they said at that time, if you testify, he may get time. We might get lucky. And if you don't, he will walk out on time served. And so to be honest with you, again, I'm standing in my kitchen looking at my babies and my husband, and I just said, well, get away from me. I don't want to deal with this. And it just felt like a gut punch. Absolutely. And the thing was, I called his other victims, and I looked at what he had done and what he got away with, and it just ate me up. most of them didn't get out at 17. And so they're still struggling with what we all went through when they didn't get a ticket out of town. And so I decided to testify. I spent every 30 days for 18 months staring at his ugly mug and listening to him deflect and deny, and no remorse, no change after 10 years in a prison. And I wanted to forgive him, and he just made it impossible. So he was eventually sentenced April 1st of last year. He went to prison. And then I went about my merry way, and I tried to heal and close doors that I had, meagerly duct taped shut at 14. And now I really needed to deal with the effects of that. But he came back into my life about a month ago, fighting clerical errors. And it's just this never ending, I call it intentional torture, where, it's, we jokingly say, we're like, what is he getting out of this other than the Burger King meal on the way to his hearing, but he's dragging me into it. And so it's still a current issue for me. And I think I shared a little bit right before we jumped on, where I put myself in so many vulnerable positions because of this trauma, because of this pain and emptiness, that I was just lucky not to be trafficked. I was lucky to not end up in much more severe or even dangerous situations, because I think back and it just makes me catch my breath about, oh my gosh, what was I doing at 16, 17, talking to these people or doing these things? And so now I want to be the hand in the darkness that reaches into these ladies' lives and says, well, yeah, there actually are resources, and there is hope, and if I can do it, you can do it. And that I'm living proof that you can overcome and create something that is what you dream of. Nothing can stop you. And so I really think it's about showing other women that they can do what they want, and there is resources and people who care. Because as you know, a lot of the times the women who really need the help, they're not asking out. They're not trying to get,
no, they're not getting
they don't think they're worthy. They don't think that they deserve it. And so it's like, I want to scream from the rooftops, like, really, ladies, if I can do it, you can. And so that's my story. And like I said, I'm still new to sharing. So thank you for asking.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for doing the brave thing, because anyone that's been through trauma can understand how even hearing someone's name, let alone having to see them at repeated court hearings, rescheduled court hearings, arranging your life around someone that did this to you is so triggering and so traumatic. Absolutely. That you are having to continue to relive this,
Yep. Almost
over a decade later. Yeah.
I mean, it takes me 30 days between hearings, just long enough to feel a little bit better. And then bam, it happens again. And you're absolutely right that it's been a struggle. And in a lot of the hearings, I hear myself turn into 14-year-old Olivia, where I respond in ways that, are just because I feel, affected by the presence and just by the conversation. Sure. But I'm learning that anger is a really good way to get out of that, because if you can actually, get mad and say, this shouldn't have been done to me, and I didn't deserve this, and I am strong, and you don't have power over me, is the only way that I've been able to kind of dig myself out of that, turn into 14-year-old Olivia, where I'm kind of like, I just want to get this over with. Instead, now I want justice. It's not about just quitting, because I told them that last year, and you can drag this out as long as you want. We're 3 years into this. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to get a plea deal. You're not going to get me to walk away because it's inconvenient, because that's what predators do. And then they get released, and it's like, this is
count on you not to fight.
Exactly. They want you to give up. They want you to walk away, so that it's them against the justice system, because it's a victim-reliant justice system, unfortunately. And without a victim impact statement, there's not much they can do. And so I really do think it's a game of, all right, we didn't make her mad enough last time. Let's schedule it out another 30 days, or let's not show for this one. And it gets to a point where you're like, is it worth it? But I know it is, because I see so many women that never get the chance to prosecute their abuser. Or if they do, they get a slap on the wrist. They get a plea deal. They get, it's not true justice in my eyes. And so that's
it's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely. And the fact that these people, these evil, wicked people in the world, are given so much courtesy inside the system just shows how broken it truly is.
Yes.
Before we go down this road, because I to go down this road, mistake.
Yes.
And without sharing too much, what did he do to you?
Well, let's see. Honestly, there was a lot of physical and emotional contact for approximately 4 or 5 years. There was physical injuries at certain points. I it's so weird to say, but it was a lot. It was a lot of mostly, started out, the grooming phase was mental manipulation. I mean, I didn't know his age. I thought his mother had died of cancer. I thought he was helping take care of his baby sister. It was things that he
Yeah.
used that a 13-year-old with a sweet heart is like, oh, my heart. So
Yep.
I had developed an emotional attachment through that. But he was also stalking me. He was showing up at my house when I stayed home from school sick, and he knew I was home alone, and following my mom and I through stores and things like that, where it was obviously not a typical relationship because this is also a grown man, but it was a very controlled, and I wasn't the only one he was doing it with, which is crazy to me. I felt like my whole life was under inspection or under his guard almost, and it was for years. And yeah, and so I remember once, I will share this because I'm sure other women have gone through this with their abusers, where the physical contact we had, I actually bled, for days, and I called him. I said, "What is this? Am I okay?" And that was I think back to that moment of running past my mom to go to the bathroom and then calling him, and I'm thinking, what was I thinking at that phase? But I was so manipulated and so kind of brainwashed in the situation where I was afraid to go to anybody. I didn't think I could ask anybody besides him. And so I was just very trapped. And that's why I say, like, the woman who spoke up, she wasn't a woman at the time. She was still a child, but she was 16, oldest of all of us. And she saved my life because I was so stuck under the thumb of a physical abuser, and I didn't even realize it, really, truly. And so that took a lot of unpacking. That took a lot of relearning. And at 16, going, wait a minute, I have no clue who this person was that I've been under the control of for 5 years. It's really wild. And also learning how I deserve to be loved, and what is abuse and what's wrong, and what are the signs, and how can you avoid it, or when to get away from it, things like that. I don't think I knew that, and I just got sucked in.
Olivia, let me ask this because I think everything's a teaching moment. I'm not slamming your parents at all. I'm asking, as a mom, what could your parents have done to make you feel comfortable to tell them and seek help from them?
That is a great question. And this is something I've talked a little bit about that with them, because I have two daughters, and the day will come where there are people interested in dating them or talking to them. I mean, even now, my daughter's 6 years old. You guys know what Roblox is, and
Yep.
there's strangers trying to talk to her now. And so it's conversations that I have a lot, but I had parents who loved me very much, but ruled with a iron fist. And so I became, I don't know how to explain it, but when you've been victimized, you're doing bad stuff. I mean, you're going to the wrong love. I love the quote that says, if you're not fed love on a silver spoon, you'll learn to lick it from knives. And I think that I felt that so deeply. I was going to all the wrong guys. I was trying to date grown men as a teenager. I was talking to men on the internet, like all of this. But when they would catch me in a problem, I would be in a lot of trouble. And I don't think they were able to separate the fear from the frustration, if you know what I mean. And to
Yeah.
say to me, we love you so much, we're so worried that these people are going to take you away or hurt you, but instead it was, you shouldn't do this. And I think that just pushed me even further into it, because then I really felt, I can't go to them, or I'm going to get in trouble for this. If they find out I, did this, or I snuck out, the night that he really physically hurt me the most, I had snuck out that night, and I had gone and gotten into his car willingly. And so to me, I had such a difficult time coming to them because I was afraid of getting in trouble, even though I was physically hurt. I really needed care, but I was too afraid of them being upset or mad or frustrated or whatever, disappointed in me that I didn't. And so I would say for parents, it's just, if you have to take a minute, you catch your kid in something, you're going through their phone and they're talking to a stranger, or maybe it's even inappropriate conversation or naked pictures of themselves, like that is a moment where you're never going to get that moment again with your child. And you have to react in a way that they feel safe and they feel loved, because otherwise they're going to think that you don't love them. One, kids always figure out how it's their fault, how they're the problem, things like that. It's just nature. And so we have to tell these kids, like, no, we love you. We want to protect you. We want to empower you. When you get in a conversation with a grown man and they say this phrase, that's when this person's being, a predator. This is where we block them or report them. And this is how we can empower, younger kids to maybe save other kids. If I would have heard that language versus me being in trouble or me being bad, I think I would have escaped it a little bit earlier, if that makes sense.
And this comes back to something we've talked about so much is, being proactive with your children. And I think parents are so afraid to have the hard conversations sometimes that they think it's just better to let their kids live in this innocent existence.
Yeah.
But you're not doing your child any favors. If they don't know the dangers out there, how can they protect themselves from those dangers?
Honestly, my parents are a bit older too, and so it's like they didn't know. The internet was new, and so I don't.
Sure.
I think they did what they could, but when it comes down to that stuff, I'm like, they didn't know I was on Omegle, like video chatting with strangers at 3 in the morning at sleepovers. But I also, they didn't know to have that talk with me. Like, like you just said, where if they would have known, they could have said, hey, I know your friends might do this, but the people on there are tricky. That's what my daughter says. She thinks that she worries about people on the internet being tricky, trying to convince her to be friends. They might buy her things on her game. They might tell her nice compliments, and then they trick you, and they try to take you away. And so that's kind of conversations that you have to build at an age appropriate level, but we don't even know all the dangers out there, the different apps and games and things that our kids have access to that we have to protect them from.
And I think it's important that parents realize that danger, is not selective. Anyone can fall victim. We drive this home all the time. I'm going to keep driving it home until people are tired of me saying this. And I'm going to say it 10 more times, because your child is not immune to predators. No child out there is immune to predators. And if you are willing to have a conversation about how you can't play with knives at 3 years old because they'll cut you, you should be able to have a conversation about you can't talk to strangers online because they could take you.
Yes.
They can take you forever.
Yes.
And that is a conversation I have with my kids because I want them to know.
And they get anxiety and it worries them, and it's a little scary conversation, but that's why I always harp on too, on the empowerment aspect of it. Like, how do we make it something that they have power over, that they have control of, instead of this can be done to you and you have no power over it and you'll never be able to stop it from happening, because that just sounds terrifying. But if you're like, hey, if you stop this, if you notice, if you can spot a tricky guy and you turn him in, then you're protecting your sister, you're protecting your friends at school. He can't get to your friends now because you did the right thing and you took action to make a difference. And I think that like, my daughter gets excited. She runs into somebody who shouldn't be on Roblox and she's like, yes, I'm gonna turn him in. And it's like, I love that.
It's just, again, I feel like since I've started at the North Group, situational awareness has taken over my life, right? Because if you apply it to every facet of your life, you may not be able to prevent everything, but you can prevent a whole lot. And so, like,
or at least be prepared for when things do happen as well. Like, knowing what could happen, knowing how to react to it, and being prepared to react to anything at any time, really, like you said, having your blinders off and actually being aware. And we talk about that even with the physical dangers, especially as moms. Ralph and I saw a woman with a baby strapped to the front, toddler in one hand, and as she walked past us, a man took a picture of her on his phone. And, in our mind, instantly I'm thinking, he's just sent that photo to somebody in the parking lot. He noticed she's not paying attention and he's going to grab her, And so we made a huge fit about it. Ralph made him pull his phone out and show us the photo. It really was just her and her kid. And we called security over and we made sure she got to her car. And when I told her, hey, did you notice that there was somebody following you and they took a photo of you and that we made a scene? And she said no. She had no clue that had even happened. And so it's like, I know sometimes, we like to put our headphones in or we like to scroll or talk on the phone while we're out, but that's how people handpick you. They're like, who's paying attention? Who's going to notice if I start sneaking around and who's going to react? And then they're going to go for an easier target. They don't want to find somebody who's going to make a scene or cause a fight. And so it's like, you got to make sure your awareness is always up.
100%. We are here to talk about human trafficking, stopping it, and another, talking about the victim aspect of this. I think it is so easy as society to say, well, there's more to it, or, well, they made that choice, because then we can put our head in the sand and not have to face the fact that evil is out there, and we each play a part in doing what we can to stop these bad things from happening. And here in the Seattle area, which is where I'm based out of, there is Highway 99. There's a stretch of it. And at any point of the day, there are women prostituting themselves on that road at any given hour. And my kids are like, oh, what is she wearing? And, and I have grown people that say, well, she could stop. She's making that choice. I want to be very, very clear when we talk about victims. Just because that girl is standing there without someone holding her hand, forcing her to stand, that does not mean she is of free will. That does not mean
you don't see her walk into her pimp's room and give him every dollar that she made that day. Right. And not get to walk out with a penny of it. We don't see her get beat up if she doesn't make her quota. People don't like to think about the ugly side of it. And like you said, women, sometimes they make decisions out of survival instinct, out of, I have no other option. And there truly are women that get to that place. I was at that place. I felt like at 17 where I was like, I'm going to join the army or die, And so it's like, women make decisions that get them in places where they are victimized. And that's how we have to look at it, is where they're still being victimized, whether they signed up to be, at a strip club or not. And a lot of the times I think that it can be tricky. It can be sneaky, where, with the human trafficking aspect of it, where you may think you're dating somebody for a year. They may take care of you and do everything you could ever dream of and buy you everything you could ever dream of. And then suddenly, when they have complete financial control over you, when they've cut you off of all of your friends or your family because they have problems with the personalities, all of a sudden they control your phone, your car, your money, and you don't have a choice. And it's like, do I stay here or do I go to, be homeless and things like that? And so I think people really don't like to think about that aspect. They think, oh, she's just making money with her body. And it's like, well, probably not, actually.
Yeah. And there are two things I want to touch on, because I want to pick your brain. I want you to explain it to people, and help us out with this. The first one is, when you talk about this with people, they'll say, well, some women get out and then they go back to it. If they really hated it, they wouldn't go back to it. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely. It's, even just the example I just gave, where we'll keep it simple, which isn't usually the case, but keep it simple. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have a car. Her family hasn't talked to her in a year. She doesn't have any friends other than his friends. And they'll tell him, where is she going to go? And if you think to yourself, even just women in better situations where maybe they don't want to break up with their boyfriend because they don't want to leave. Like, even in simple situations in life, you wouldn't jump out the door and flee with nothing. You would try to come up with a plan. You would try to come up with a solution, but these women don't have those resources. They don't have access to the resources to be able to get out completely. And, a lot of the times their trafficker has made them addicted to drugs, use drugs to control them. So they may even have a drug problem that they can't afford, or they can't detox on their own. Other times they have a criminal history because they get picked up on prostitution, which is illegal, or they get picked up on driving the car, driving the girls. And most of the time there'll be no license and no insurance and no, these kind of things, because they don't care if the girls get in trouble. The traffickers are never going to be the one driving the car because they don't want to get caught like that. And so a lot of the times you'll start to see a criminal history. So put on no money, nowhere to go, criminal history, no job experience other than stripping, maybe even can't read, or, in certain situations where they were trafficked very young, their education level might be 8th grade, things like that. And so there's so many different layers to what prevents them from getting a better opportunity. But I know women who call me and they need a way out, and it takes me a month to find them a short-term stay to get into a long-term stay. They don't have access to a computer, which you have to apply for long-term care. They don't have somewhere safe to be, or they need to detox from drugs because a lot of long-term care programs, you can't have drugs in your system. And so it's just, there's so many steps that they've got to somehow accomplish on their own when they've never been taught how to do that. And then all of a sudden it's like they have to save themselves or come up with some crazy idea that they've never thought of or thought possible.
And we are talking about abusive relationships. You know what you know. So some of these women think this is love, right? This is,
maybe they never even had anything better. Maybe they were targeted by the trafficker because they had a bad relationship with their family. And that's I hear the stories all the time, especially about kids who go online onto Facebook or onto Reddit, and they just say, oh, I hate my mom and dad so much, I hate my life here. And that is like a sitting duck to a trafficker. They just send a little DM like, oh, I get it, I feel you, let me buy you a video game to make you feel better, like, let's be friends, let me talk to you. And then they target kids that are like that. And so you're right, a lot of the times these women have probably already been abused by their family members or maybe by somebody else in their childhood, and so they're just vulnerable to it. They don't know that they deserve better unless somebody is able to get to them and say, you are worthy of anything you can dream of, absolutely anything. And here's the resources, let me help you, let me bring you a computer, let me get you somewhere safe. It really does take support and actual encouragement and physically making a change for these women to be able to really get what they deserve.
As is with anything in life, we can start to feel hopeless when we can't help, right? So my question to you would be, I was driving with my two daughters in the car, and I'm in a not so great part of Seattle, and I see a woman get out of the car. She walks 2 blocks. I'm going to get emotional because as a mom, I can't stomach it, right? Like the fight in me wants to go rip the guy out of the car and bash his head in, like that is the fighter in me. Yeah. And then the mom in me sees this woman in her 20s who she doesn't look healthy. I can see drug marks on her face, and she is naked other than like a short coat. Mm-hmm. That's what she has on. And my kids are like, oh, I can see, and I'm just like,
it's not like you can throw her in the car with you.
I want to throw her in the car, but I can't because I have to protect
always
my own children.
And you don't know. And if somebody really is on a lot of drugs, or maybe they're really desperate for money, they can't, you always have to be cautious, especially when you have your own kids. And so that's something that we totally feel too. And so that's difficult. There's a lot of organizations, incredible organizations, that will actually go down, downtown to the warming stations where, you might find a fire, or you might find a group of homeless people sitting together, or, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got to go out and go to where they are and bring information in small forms, so they're not going to get in trouble for, waving a red escape flag around. They don't want their trafficker to see that. And so that's another thing. You also have to be worried that, you can't interrupt their job, they're working, or they're going to get in trouble. And so it's just being able to, maybe in your area, if you can research some restorative care programs, women's programs, and I can always help with that. If anybody listening wants a good program, or people who genuinely care and want to make a difference, I can help all over the nation. There's dedicated people that will drop what they're doing to really go and help, and really go and sit with that person and have that conversation if they need to, because sometimes that is what it takes, is getting physically to them and being able to say, like, and honestly, sometimes the first time they don't trust you anyway. They're not going to listen to you or go with you. But if we can share the information and start the conversations either through social media, or, like I know a couple that would go to the strip club together, and they would buy a girl's time, but while they're sitting with her alone, they're literally talking to her and telling her the options that she has, and maybe she can tell the other girls and things like that, which obviously can be dangerous, like I said, because traffickers don't want you messing with their payday. And so they don't want them getting out, honestly. And but just knowing the resources in your area, or knowing people who can get help, because when that victim reaches out, it may be the only time they ever reach out. And it may be like a do or die kind of situation where they need somewhere to be now, or, their trafficker is going to find out, or whatever it is. But honestly, most of the time we've only had, if we have a victim reach out, we know that's the one time, we have a chance to help. And honestly, even sometimes then it doesn't get to the completion, doesn't really get to the full help, because the process is strained. And not what it should be. And so, honestly, sometimes I'm having a girl move domestic violence shelter to domestic violence shelter to domestic violence shelter while she waits for her application process, while she detoxes, and it's triggering. And she's calling me, these girls are beating each other up. These girls are stealing each other's stuff. And my trafficker drove around the block 3 times. And, things are really scary to them. And so sometimes they'll run, they'll go, okay, this system is not helping me. The system is not here to help me, and they'll go again. But just knowing that you can be there and you can actually be prepared for a reach out, or knowing how to help and knowing who to call, because you don't want to waste, a week trying to find the right person to help. You want to know who in your area is really going to be able to go help this person.
I want to kind of, talking about the need for help and what it actually looks like and what it actually takes. And this is not a slam on any of our police departments, law enforcement, all on my mom's side. I have the utmost respect for day in and day out what they do. And I couldn't do it. And I'm so glad and thankful they can. But the bottom line is, I know that the task force that handles 99 is so incredibly strapped,
Yes.
undermanaged, understaffed. I mean, how do we adequately begin to fight this through our criminal justice system? Is it possible?
That's a great question. And I will say, I am totally pro law enforcement, pro the system. We need to have systems. We need to have law enforcement. I think there's a huge issue with lack of resources and funding for law enforcement, because I know there's stacks of, projects.
Yeah.
But and then it also comes down to, say you figure out who that girl's being trafficked by, but maybe he's not trafficking a bunch of girls. Maybe it's just 1 or 2. Like, that's not as big or as important to the state as this guy who's trafficking 100 women. So a lot of the times, they really do focus on certain cases, but honestly, that's something that we want to impact through ZFIS. And I know a lot of other organizations do, where, say I see an arrest and they arrested 2 individuals out of for trafficking. I know there's a lot of other individuals that are making that criminal organization operate logistically, financially, any of those things. And so I can look into this group, look at what properties they own, what businesses they're registered to, if they have shell companies, if they have any illicit activity that I can prove through investigative services, I can compile into a report and turn into law enforcement with the sources cited, with the documents attached. So all they literally have to do is follow a link, confirm the data is accurate, and then they're able to move a lot faster, versus they get a call, they have to do surveillance for this long, they have to do this or that, they're restricted on researching and things like that, because that's just not a tool of the the police as much as it is civilian market, or the 3-letter agencies. And so we try to apply that, and honestly, half the time my goal is not even to get somebody for human trafficking, because that's difficult. But they're probably laundering money, they're probably avoiding taxes, and they probably have RICO Act violations. And so typically we kind of go after those, easier to prosecute, and then attach the human trafficking at the bottom. Like, yeah, by the way, they're doing this too, but I know this is a lot easier to do. And so we call it putting the cookies on the bottom shelf and giving it to law enforcement, so they're able to see big picture. Because like I said, that one time they arrest 2 people, and that's amazing and great, but they don't realize that half of their relatives also live in the area, and they're still running the business, and the girlfriend owns the property where they were conducting business out of. And so, like, why isn't she arrested? And so there's just a lot of ways where I think we need to, like everybody always says, follow the money, but also widen the view. Like, don't just look at the one guy who's a bad guy. You need to be doing network analysis. Like, who is funding these people?
Right.
Where are they conducting business? Is it rented? Is it owned? Like, who sold it to them? How much did they buy it for? Blah, 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 blah. Shell companies, political ties. Like, we need to actually be aware of full picture of who these people are, and then try to go after multiple things so that they can really be, it can be an easy conviction, versus our law enforcement being exhausted and underfunded and understaffed and having to deal with all of these issues. When honestly, a lot of it's not in front of them. It's all online. It's all, in wraps. And Yeah, of course you can see an illicit massage parlor, or you can see, like you said, a woman who's being prostituted, but it's a little bit easier to prove money laundering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, it's like way faster, easier to look for alternative methods of disruption. That's what we call it. We'll disrupt them.
I love it. I love
You
you.
got an attorney? I'm gonna turn the attorney in. The attorney's probably a bad guy too. You know, now
Yeah.
nobody can defend them. Like just coming up with ways to really make it difficult for them to continue to operate, because you can take one guy out and they'll replace him in a second. Or again, one girl as well. You know, that's nothing to them. It's just call the next and continue to do what they're doing, or open a new one, a new place, whatever it is. But I think we should just focus on. I know everybody wants to focus on prevention and focus on empowering women to not become vulnerable to this and to avoid it and know what to look for and know the resources available. And I think law enforcement, you know, they get heat for calling, you know, their missions a rescue, which I believe that is a rescue, but there's also so many other steps to it, and just getting out of the situation is it's not going to support them or help them. But if we could all work on a one team, one fight basis, where we're actually here to support each other and partner, and all of our nonprofits and organizations reach out to law enforcement and say, when you have a victim come in, please let me know, and I'll get her care. You know, there's not a lot of that. It's just kind of a lot of everybody headbutting and trying to say, I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, like we all are, but we need to do it together and support each other's missions to really be effective.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, preventative measures. And I know that like at my daughter's school, they have the safe touch program, right? Where they teach you like what a safe touch is, what not a safe touch is.
Yes.
I would really love in every school when they're teaching sex ed to also teach this is what healthy relationships look like.
Absolutely.
This is what love looks like. This is what manipulation looks like. This is what forced love looks like, you know? And I think that if we can come at it like that and get everyone on board with that, I mean, I think we would nip so much of it from jump, you know, because we're already I feel like there are so many efforts out there now. We are pushing online safety. Don't talk in chat rooms. I know it's still happening way too much, but at least the effort to get it out there is very apparent to me, and people are pushing that. I don't hear the conversation being pushed as much about teaching young women what love looks like. And I'm sorry, but women are more victimized than men. And I think that I would love to see a focus on young women.
And honestly, how to get out. You know, okay, so you realize you're in a bad place. Or for example, you've been married to somebody for 6 years and they just hit you for the first time. Where maybe they've been aggressive before, but they had not gone that far. And so now you're like, well, now I'm tied in, now I'm stuck. And they don't know what to do. And so I think it would be, and actually we talk about that a lot with like the Relentless Revival social media, which if anybody wants to help me with social media content, we're a fun crowd. Yeah.
I will help you.
And I think it would be fun just to create a lot of conversation, like exactly like you just said, like when is this turning into manipulation? When is this turning into exploitation? When is it? And what do I do now if I realize I am there? Because I know, like you said earlier, you feel stuck. You feel stuck, and sometimes you even go into survival mode where you might not even be trying to get unstuck. You're just like, I'm just going to survive the day. I'm going to get through the week, and weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and all of a sudden you're in a place that you've been for far too long, and you don't know how to get out, and you don't have the resources. And so I think changing those conversations would absolutely. And honestly, I see a lot of organizations kind of, and this takes some guts, because they're mostly run by former Johns, which if you don't know the term, is a sex buyer. And so I've met quite a few men who have realized the wrongs in their ways because they learned about what human trafficking is and realize it's not just somebody trying to make a couple bucks. It's actually somebody being victimized, and I'm victimizing her by doing this. And so they go out and teach men, like, because men, we have to think that they just don't know better. And so they don't do better. For example, I think of when I was in the Army, I was in Hawaii. Of all places, you'd think they would be letting us know about trafficking or letting us know about prostitution. Friday night safety brief, they're like, don't get hookers, they're dirty. And I'm like, that's not that's not good. Like, they don't care. Like, you're just making the guys want to go more. They're like, oh, I want to see it. But if we were
Yeah.
to tell them you're victimizing somebody, they wouldn't want to do it. They wouldn't want to, I like to think, especially in the service, that most people have the heart to not want to harm others. And if they
Right.
just don't even know what they're doing, then how can we expect them to change or do better? So I think it's awesome that there's kind of a bit of that conversation going on as well, where maybe you are victimizing somebody. Are you exploiting or manipulating somebody? And, having that kind of guy to guy conversation sometimes helps as well. And we reduce the supply, we reduce the demand, eventually we'll be able to make an impact.
You briefly mentioned Project ZF and everything that is going into it, the facility and everything. I haven't gotten an update in a while. I want to focus on this for a little bit. So tell me what's going on. Tell, the audience member that doesn't know anything. Let's talk about this.
Okay. Well, ZFIS is kind of my side of the house, my baby. So I'll talk about that first. We do protective intelligence, which, as you know, is a super vague term that means a lot of things. But a lot of the times, and we've recently been able to jump into a couple of projects that are actually impactful. I can run background checks all day, and I can do vulnerability assessments and cybersecurity and things like that. But I love when I get a reach out that says, "Hey, I've got a bad guy. I've got this network or criminal organization I need to know more information about," or even somebody who's been wronged. That's what I love to work on, where maybe they invested a bunch of money into somebody and that person ran off with it. And I get to dig into that, and I get to create something that will, make an impact and help people who have been wronged. And so we've actually been working on some really fun projects. I can't say names, but it will soon be pretty good news. Very large organization. It's existed for 40 years, and they've been exploiting children the whole time. And because they have so much money, because they have a nice reputation, on the surface level, they've been getting away with it. Because I try to tell people, you think somebody else will do something about it? They won't. Everybody thinks that. And so we are the people that see something and then actually do something. And that's why some of our apparel actually says, see something, say something. Because
Yeah.
I think, you think about when you drive by somebody whose tire's blown out, half the time you're like, somebody else will pull over and help them. But honestly, it's like, I don't think so in this kind of space. And so we are the people that see something and say something and do something about it, and support law enforcement, because we know that they deserve the support, and things like that. And then Tactical Training Center. When we really started building this out about a year ago, we focused on building the dream team. That's what we call them. But our board is Mark Eckerd. He is a recently retired Command Sergeant Major.
Mm-hmm.
We have Dean and Alana Stott. We always say they're more of a British-based celebrity face, but soon to be in the U.S. as well. Dean was British SBS. He got injured in duty, actually. And once he left, him and his wife raised over $1 million for charity by biking. I think it was 14,000 miles, tip of North America to South America, broke the record by, I think, 17 days. And they were like, you cheated. You had to, because you did so good. And he proved he didn't. But and last but not least is Lee Ogden. He's really been our day one since,
Yeah.
We met for a lunch in Woodlands, stayed for 8.5 hours, instant click.
Yep.
So,
yes.
And Lee is just so many incredible things, but currently residing in Mexico and running the kindness games, as you know. And
Lee's how you and I met. So yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Lee is how I've met most of the great people that I'm connected with. He has a niche for being like, I'm not going to tell you why, but you're going to have a call with this person. And
yes, he is
why, and it always ends up flawless.
Ultimate connector.
Yes, ultimate connector, ultimate, he's just uplifting and inspiring and keeps us going, like keeps us motivated. And so that was our big focus there. And obviously we're working towards property purchase. That's next step. Once that occurs, Ralph dreams of putting up his hammock with a box of beer and clearing out the land for the next month. And but then once that happens, the Tactical Training Center and the Safe Haven, we plan to construct them simultaneously. The Safe Haven, we've kind of developed a relationship. I'll shout them out here because they're really cool. They're called the Green Magic Homes. They look like Hobbit houses, they're just they're adorable, but they're also very eco-friendly, and they're actually cheaper than just a stick-built tiny home. So that's the plan, community farm and garden. And then our program will be 18 to 24 months of specialized therapy for trauma and addiction, animal-assisted therapy, art therapy, and then economic empowerment through guided networking, career coaching, and internships that we are kind of building up with different organizations and different industries. And so that's kind of where we're at. And right now, while we don't have a facility, we do a lot of advocacy work. We arrange the care, we help get the help that women need, or get the resources to them, buy the luggage, whatever it is needed for them to get that fresh start and get the support that they truly need. We are planning our first fundraiser, which all the proceeds are going to go to the nonprofit. She is a 501c3, veteran owned. But really our focus is to get everybody together for that event, because Lee, everybody is across the world. All of our supporters and people who get our vision are everywhere. So we dream of the night we all get to sit, at one table and really connect and really talk. So that's the plan. We'll have live music. And
when is this?
This is going to be October, I want to say 12th. I'll confirm that date for you, but it's
Where do people go for more information?
Yes, they can go to my LinkedIn or email me. I'm really active on LinkedIn, though. We always joke, my husband has the Wish app version of my LinkedIn because he's not as active. But that's where you can get a hold of me. And we like to chat. And Ralph and I, we've said it a couple of times during this chat, like, we are about community, and we're all on the same team. And I think we would all be stronger together. And since we've entered this space, especially the anti-human trafficking space, there's an odd, like, headbutting, like everybody's in competition almost. And I get it with like the grant money and like the donors, like nobody wants to lose that to somebody else. But like we've honestly built all three businesses in Project ZF in the way that our revenue will fund our charity long term. So we don't have to depend on grants, because we see incredible organizations go for 13 years, lose a grant, and have to shut down. But I just want all organizations to know, like, we're not competition. We want to support. We want to get you connected to the connections we have, or to law enforcement, or to victim resources, or whatever it might be, that we can actually help people together across the world and make a difference. So love to chat on LinkedIn and connect people. Obviously, Lee's rubbed off on me.
Well, I will tell you, I'm just so impressed with you and what you're doing, because, it's one thing to talk the talk. It's another thing to do it actively. I know this is so exciting, but I know how much work this is. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And I just wish you all the best. And of course, we're going to be in touch, but yes. I wish you not only all the best with your project, but I wish you all the best with your personal journey, because you continue to fight the fight on so many levels for yourself, to protect other people, and just anti-trafficking, at large. And I'm better to know you, and I appreciate your time. So thanks for coming on, Olivia.
Thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate it. And I've told you this before, but I think this was all put in my life for a reason. And I think I'm being prepared for my purpose in a really deep way. And so I look for the goodness. I look for the lesson in each moment, and how can I apply this to help others in my life, because that honestly brings me joy, if you know what I mean. Like, that's what fulfills me, is when somebody else's life is better. And so that's where we get our joy. And I know you feel the same way. You're the same kind of person where, you make somebody else happy and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Yes. You got to do your part. Yeah,
absolutely. But it was amazing to talk, and I look forward to follow-on conversation. And we need to chat more on preventing this from happening, and to, steps we can take to make a difference.
All right, Olivia, thank you. And thanks to all of you for listening or watching. And for more episodes of our podcast, Time to Head North, just head to tngdefense.com under the podcast section. We've had so many great conversations over the past 2 years or so. And I just, I'm sure we'll have you on again, because I'm going to want an update. And I really am hoping somehow, by the grace of God, I can make the fundraiser. So
yes, I would love to have you guys. It's going to be a really good time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.